Alright, you may have felt it, but is Canada really becoming anti-immigrant? And I don't mean like torches and hate rallies, I mean something quieter, something polite, something Canadian. I've been seeing more and more people say, I'm not anti-immigrant, and the second you hear but, you know it's something like, I'm not racist, but, you know how that goes. Now I found this Reddit thread, Wild Stuff, where people are arguing why anti-immigrant sentiment is rising in Canada, and it's not just a few angry trolls. We're talking hundreds of upvotes, thoughtful comments, long debates with some very smart people. And what they're saying, it's not all crazy. It's kind of what a lot of people are thinking but don't want to say out loud. One guy wrote, almost all of Canada has underlying infrastructure issues. Education, housing, healthcare, utilities, and all of that is being made worse by insane immigration numbers. We should pause immigration for 5 years. Pause immigration in Canada? That's a huge shift from the country that literally brands itself on being open and welcoming. But look, if you're struggling to get a family doctor, can't afford rent, and your kids are in overcrowded schools, and then you hear we're bringing in 1 million more people this year, it's easy to point fingers. Canada added over 1.2 million new residents in 2023, the most in history. And get this, over 40% of that population growth came from non-permanent residents. That's mostly students and foreign workers. What people don't realize is we've already been through this before. My friend Daniel Bernhard, the CEO of Institute of Canadian Citizenship, speaks about how immigrants are the core foundation of the society.
For centuries, immigrants have helped Canada overcome our greatest challenges. But lately, a dangerous old story has jumped from history into the headlines, that newcomers have caused our failings, from unaffordable housing to horrific healthcare wait times. This is not new. Irish, Ukrainian, Italian, Chinese immigrants were all once ridiculed in ways that seem absurd today. We now appreciate that they built the homes we live in, introduced the foods we love, and established essential Canadian traditions like patio season and St. Patrick's Day. We're plastering these posters across Canada to show how today's anti-immigration rhetoric is really not much different than the silly historical prejudices that we all laugh at now. Let's get real.
Because if you take them out, yes, there may be less pressure on housing or hospitals, but the problem would get even worse because we have a ton of immigrant nurses and doctors that Canadians rely on, let alone all the construction workers who build those homes we live in. And a lot of people are pointing fingers at international students. That's the hot topic. Reddit's full of this idea that students from countries like India are just coming here to work, not study. Some guy posted, why are we handing out study permits just so that they can work at Tim Hortons? Okay, someone's life is kind of desperate, it sounds like. But let's pause and think about what's really happening. Is it the immigrants' fault or the system that told them they could come here, work a few hours, study part-time, and somehow afford rent in Toronto? There are over 1 million international students in Canada, but the overall student visa refusal rate in 2024, guess, 52%. That means half of applicants are being told no, even after investing in agents, tuition, and promises. And by the way, they're not the ones setting the immigration targets, the Canadian government is. But here's where it gets even messier. You've got other immigrants, people who came here 10, 20, even 50 years ago, and they're now the loudest voices saying, this wave of immigrants is different. They say today's newcomers aren't integrating, aren't learning English, and aren't respecting Canadian values. Someone wrote, my parents came in the 60s, worked 70 hours a week, never went on vacation, saved every penny, and never complained. These new immigrants just whine and demand PR. You know what it is? That's the classic, I suffered, so you should too energy. And this divide between old and new immigrants, it's not new. It's history repeating itself. Irish immigrants hated the Italians. Italians hated the Greeks. Greeks hated the Vietnamese. And now everyone's hating on international students. Same cycle, different faces. That's why ICC put up these posters. But here's the real kicker. Even people who are genuinely pro-immigration are saying, we don't have the room. Not physical room, we've got a ton of land, but services, doctors, housing, transit, it's all stretched to the max. As of 2023, 6.5 million Canadians have no family doctor. According to LiveRent, the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Toronto is $2,126. A lot for a single person. And Canada needs 5.8 million new homes by 2023 to restore affordability. But we're nowhere near meeting that. You ever try to get a specialist appointment in this country? Good luck. You might wait for months or even years. So people are looking around, and instead of blaming years of underfunding and bad policy decisions, often from provinces, they blame the guy who just moved here last week. But here's a thought. What if the immigrants are being played too? Think about it. You've got ultra-rich investors buying up 10 buildings each, putting them on Airbnb or worse, locking them up to let the apartments appreciate, lowering supply and jacking up rents. Then they staff their McDonald's and Tim Hortons with foreign workers they underpay, and then turn around and rent those same workers a basement for $1,800 a month. That's a real cycle, and immigrants are stuck right in the middle of it. One of the Reddit comments nailed it. The ultra-rich take advantage of Canadians and immigrants, then sit back and smirk when we blame each other. The truth is, immigrants didn't break the healthcare system. They didn't freeze wages. They didn't cause the housing crisis. That's mismanagement. And as someone who likes getting information from the source, I get to work with politicians. And I can tell you that most politicians have the best intentions. But it's the system in itself that seems to not function properly and reward the wrong behavior. So what happens next? We're seeing record high asylum claims from students. Yeah. That's a red flag. That's not a few people gaming the system. That's a crisis of broken expectations. You can't say, come study here, then give them zero support, let them drown in rent and rejection letters, and then act surprised when they apply for refugee status. And now people are saying, let's cap it, let's pause immigration until we catch up. Okay, but catch up to what? To a system that was broken even before immigrants arrived. Now here's the irony. The immigrants everyone says they want, doctors, nurses, engineers, those people are already coming here. But nearly half of immigrants with international degrees end up working jobs that don't match their skills. Only 1 in 4 internationally trained doctors ever gets to practice medicine in Canada within 5 years of arriving. So we're importing talent and then burying it in paperwork. It's not right. So back to the question, is Canada becoming anti-immigrant? Honestly, I think it's becoming anti-trust, anti-belief in the system. People don't trust that their taxes are giving them healthcare. They don't trust that working hard will ever let them buy a home. So they look for someone to blame, and immigrants are the easiest target. That's not uniquely Canadian, that's just human. It happens around the world. But I see hope. Our new Prime Minister is very result-oriented. He cares about numbers, the economy, and expects no BS from his cabinet. They're supposed to deliver. They're now launching a government agency, Build Canada Homes. It will be a crown corporation, which is like a government-run company, that will provide $25 billion in financing to prefab home builders in Canada and $10 billion in low-cost financing to affordable home builders in Canada, which has not been done in decades. I'm sure we'll see the effects of it. And why am I so positive, you may ask? Do you remember the Toronto rent graph I brought up during this video? Well, now rent is lower than last year. But have you thought that at the end of the day, the life that you have is the result of actions you take? Yes, that's my mindset, that I try to be self-accountable, not point fingers and look for someone to blame, but build the future that I want to have for myself and this country. What I always recommend to new immigrants is to protect their future by creating financial freedom. A lot of successful people I know have a simple way to do it that is very passive, through investing, particularly in index funds. You may have heard about it. They're like baskets of top companies. Basically, if one fails, the other companies can still make you money. If you want to understand more about how it works and how to get started even as an international student right now, then watch this video next where I explain my investing strategy in simple tutorial. It's very quick and easy to understand, I promise. Now let's take it to the comments. Is Canada still welcoming immigrants, or are we just pretending? Let me know below the video, and thank you for watching.